Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so glad you're with us today. When I first began to study the afterlife evidence, it was way back at the start of the 1970s, and this whole field was considered to be not just far out, but extremely far beyond far out. No one was interested. It had been a hot topic in the first few decades of the 20th century, but by the 1960s, we were in New Age, and we were marching against the war, and we were marching for civil rights, and we were doing all sorts of other stuff, and serious researchers had no place in that. It really wasn't until Raymond Moody published Life After Life in 1976, and he coined there the term near-death experiences, that a general public interest in what happens at and after death, began to develop, and it grew by a lot over the next 40 years. Today, of course, the oldest baby boomers are entering our 70s. Can you believe it? Baby boomers, what a funny term for us now. We boomers have led every cultural craze over the past 3/4 of a century. We are a very big generation. They used to call us a pig passing through a boa. How does that make you feel about yourself, Lord? So we led it all in the family-crazed 50s. We were what it was about. Then came the war protest, civil rights disco, careerism, raising children, and then finally shifting gears toward retirement. And now, for boomers, the next big thing, let's be frank, is death. And don't I know it? I'm hearing from more and more people in this generation that was born actually right after the Second World War who are now noticing that, death is on the horizon here. Sometimes they have a health scare. Sometimes someone that they care about dies, and they say, whoopsie, I got to start thinking about this. They want to master death as they have mastered everything else in their long lives. Our guest today is Tricia J. Robertson, and she is with us today all the way from the United Kingdom. I love this. She's in Scotland now, and she sounds wonderful. Will you hear her voice? Tricia has made a name for herself in afterlife circles by writing 2 very well-received books called Things You Can Do When You're Dead and More Things You Can Do When You're Dead. We've talked with a lot of afterlife experts on Seek Reality over the years, but Tricia's latest book is something new. It's called It's Life and Death, but Not As You Know It. And it's full of fascinating and, frankly, some bizarre stories and phenomena. I know about just about all of them, so they don't amaze me as much as they may amaze you, but I think it's important we understand just how broad and complex this field really is. In his foreword to her book, the wonderful Icelandic researcher Dr. Erlendur Haraldsson says, Tricia's new book is encyclopedic in its scope, and as it deals with various unbelievable to bizarre phenomena, including electronic voice phenomena and much more. Tricia Robertson is a former teacher of mathematics and physics and a lecturer in psychical research at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. So, unlike me, she is a serious scholar. She has had some 30 years of experience in investigating many avenues of what, really we shouldn't be calling it the paranormal anymore because we know now that it's all just part of normal. Tricia calls her books an introduction to many subjects within the broad spectrum of the paranormal, or now sort of the extended normal. And I think we all are going to learn some things today, including me. Tricia, welcome. I'm so glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Roberta. It's good to be here.
This is going to be fun. You and I have actually had very peculiar, eccentric hobby, this studying death and the afterlife and figuring out what happens at and after death. I mean, more and more people are interested now, but we were pretty much alone in the beginning. And I'd like to sort of know what got you started doing this work.
Well, everyone asks me the same question, and I actually don't have a very interesting answer. At that particular time, I was happily married with a nice husband. We had 2 cars, 2 children, nice house, and everything was absolutely fine and happy and sunny and everything. And then for some peculiar reason, a friend and I decided to go down to the local spiritualist church, actually quite a big church. And I began to listen to what the mediums were saying. And intellectually, I have no psychic ability whatsoever. I'm a very logical person. If I hadn't been a maths and physics teacher, I would have liked to have done law. But that's the kind of mind I have, very straightforward, black and white. And I began to listen to people getting messages from mediums. And then I began to follow people about after and ask them if that meant anything to them, etc., etc. And then I followed on with that by taking a notebook, etc. And it intrigued me intellectually. Is there something in this? And if there's something in this, this is something that should be looked into. And that's really how it started. I've never asked for any of this, by the way, Roberta. I don't know about you. This just happened to me. And of course,
right.
Once you open your mind, things fell into my path, as it were, one thing after another. And of course, your experience grows and you meet different people. And then I met Professor Archie Roy. Later on, I met Archie, and he was a professor of physics and astronomy. And we got on extremely well, interested in this. And then we started to go on cases. And then we founded the Scottish Society for Psychical Research. And the rest, as you say, is history. And of course, I don't know about you, but once you start looking at these things, your life can take a downward spiral as well.
Really? I haven't had that, but we'll
good for you.
We're still going along here. I did go through a period when my Catholic husband told me I was going to hell, but we managed to get past that. He's very loyal. But I think we all, when we've sort of gotten exposed a little bit, and for me it happened very early in my life because I was trying to figure out some things, and when you realize that how consistent all the afterlife evidence is, you realize it's a real thing. You don't find odd people having said that everyone there is purple, or you have to go through this and that ritual or whatever. It's all the same evidence when you talk to people who actually are dead. And that really hooks you. Don't you think that's really what does it?
It does. And I state right away, it's not that what we do is nothing against any particular religion, but it's also got nothing to do with any religion at all. But
that's right.
You can incorporate what you find within a religion if that suits your model of the world. But it's a fact. I look at evidence in different aspects of psychical research. I call it psychical research rather than the paranormal, because psychical research, as you'll see from the earlier books, is a rational study by scientists and scholars of claims made about the paranormal. So I prefer to call it psychical research. And it's a fact. You look at what's happening, you take the data, you do, and where you can, you do experiments. But of course, the best evidence of all is experience. If you've experienced something you can't explain within the normal parameters of what we accept in this world, and then you have to say, hey, wait a minute, there's something odd here. And that's what I look at. Experiences of who we are while we're still alive. And you will see by various books that we have immense hidden talents and things that we can do that we don't actually realize that we can.
That's right.
Often it materializes under stress. But we are truly amazing people. And of course, nowadays I will speak about consciousness after death. What we truly are, that bit of us that's inside us, the real you, the person that's not 70 years old, the person who is still the child inside, the same consciousness, same memories, the same intellect. That's what survives, the real you, the real substance of who you are, not your face, not your height, not your hair color, the real you. We're encapsulated in a physical body. For whatever reason, we really don't know, but we are, and that's a fact.
Talking about consciousness is a very basic topic, and I love the way you really got into it to some extent. You talked about, for example, the fact that emotion is really what governs consciousness. Now, most people think consciousness is generated by their brains, which is not true, and they think emotion is a personal interior thing, which is not true at all. Emotion is what governs consciousness. And you obviously independently for me, I mean, totally on your own, you figured all of that out as well, which I thought was great. And you discussed it, was a wonderful discussion of how, I mean, you had someone saying that, I respect your work very much, Dr. Ryan, obviously Joseph Ryan, but I do not like just to guess cards. I've got to be emotionally involved in a case. I think that's how we all feel,
yeah,
and
I
people don't think about why.
Yeah, that epitomized it for me. I loved that. I did some research on that, and I absolutely loved that because it said it all. And it's now come to me after nearly 35 years of work on this, that no matter what avenue of the paranormal you're talking about, no matter what, there has to be emotion, there has to be motivation, and there has to be intention. If you don't have those things, then that particular thing does not work. A lot of people say, oh, why does so-and-so who has died not come back to see me? Well, it's unfortunate, but sometimes they may not have the need to come back to see you. They may think it's better to leave you without the connection, or they may be doing something else on a higher level of consciousness in which they're really not able to come back to see you. And you can't tell that to everyone, though. It sounds scary, but it's not.
Yeah, they think all our loved ones are sort of sitting along the edges of clouds, swinging their feet, watching us, very bored. But the opposite is true. There's so much more fun stuff to do there than there is to do
absolutely.
Here. That they're off playing.
Exactly. The most common, shall we say, thing, if we want to call it the paranormal, that everyone has, nearly 90% of your listeners and 90% certainly of people that I know, when someone passes that you're very close to, someone where there's sort of love and affection on both sides, when they pass, they always try to come back to give you a sign, a signal, something to let you know that they have arrived safely. And to me, this is one of the most important parts of this work. We give people hope. We give not only hope, but we give them evidence that people can come back and do various things. They can come back and move vases about your house to let you know that they're there. You can hear the voice. You can smell the perfume. And in some cases, you can hear the voice. Nowadays, some are coming back via telephone and other electronic devices.
Yes.
But the biggest intention, and all my life, I keep coming back to this word intention. And they have the intention and the motivation to let you know, look, I'm all right now. Get on with your own life. We've got stuff to do over here, but just know we are here and we love you.
Yes.
If you really need us, we can be here, but we've got a job to do, and so have you. Get on with it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And since time is not a reality there, objective time as we experience it here, it doesn't seem to take long before you'll show up there anyway. It's not as if they're sitting around pining for us. Quite the contrary. No, very well done. This book is a series of what you might call odd phenomena. And very clearly, it's not a long book. We love short books that are right to the point, and this is at one in spades exactly what people enjoy reading. I couldn't put it down, to tell you the truth. And what I like is the fact that you break out these phenomena, and then you get right to the point about what's interesting about them and what it tells us. Let's talk about precognition. You say, and you get right into it, planes and trains that are involved in accidents have an atypically small number of passengers. And that seems to involve precognition on the part of the prospective passengers that they don't even understand is going on.
Yeah,
subconsciously. Talk about that, because I think that's very important. And it's true, by the way. I mean, on the planes on 9/11 were uncharacteristically empty.
Yeah, I'm not pretending to say that I can explain this, but it is a fact. It is a statistical fact that in any transportation that has even the Titanic wasn't as full as it should have been.
Yes.
We as human beings, you see, you have your consciousness that works in different wavelengths. We're speaking just now on the beta wavelength. The higher, the ups and downs are higher, up and down, up and down. So we're in that level of consciousness. And as you relax a bit, your brain waves go to alpha 1, maybe a bit dreamy, alpha 2, and then you go way down to theta. Now, at the lower level of consciousness, I think that's where we tune in, if you want. I don't like that word, but if you tune in to the consciousness of, shall we say, the world of events, and it's that part of your consciousness, one of the subconscious levels, that gives you a slight, there's something wrong here, but you don't really know it. Your subconscious is looking after you. And it really does. Your subconscious is the master of your body. It looks after you when you don't look after yourself. And it's at that level we seem to know. Don't ask me how we know, but we seem to know that we really shouldn't do something. It's a bit like if you meet someone in the real world, sometimes you meet someone and you just don't like them. There's something about them.
Yeah.
It's a sense you go, no, there's something about that person I don't like. It's a bit like that, only at a much deeper level.
Yeah, I think that it's important that people understand that you do have a subconscious mind, which is actually most of your mind, that it is still working, although you're not directly tied to it, and it will give you instincts, they feel like, or hunches, absolutely, or something. Pay attention to those. That's important. It's not trivial. And I thought your discussion of that was great. And now here's something else you talk about, which is important. EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena. This is something else that had a heyday, and the heyday was, what would you say, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s?
Whatever I wrote in the book, I think it was 60s when... when they got going. And then at the end of the 80s, you have Annabella Cardoso is one of the stars in this field. She's lovely, Annabella. I know her, yeah.
Oh, well, I've read her books. I think she's wonderful. But at the end of the 1980s, she worked with what's called time stream, or works with still, and the others were working with time stream as well. The Harsh Fishbach couple, for example.
Yes.
But they said, and this is what was at the end of the 1980s. Now look where we are. We are 40 years after that or something.
Yeah.
And the technician who was the leader in that the non-material leader, the leader of the group working with these people from the afterlife, said that communicators from another dimension which is these people, had informed the Luxembourg team, the Harsh Fishbachs, that soon ITC, which is instrumental transcommunication, would be everywhere. Soon it will be everywhere in the 1980s. And they vowed that it would happen by the end of the 20th century, or if it didn't, it would be true in the 21st century.
Yes.
This communication with the people who are not, after all, dead, they are perfectly as much as, actually even maybe more alive than we all are, is something that they have been trying in the afterlife for a very long time to make common. They want you to have an app on your phone that you can use to call up your great-great-great-great-grandmother and get her recipe. They want that kind of communication to happen. They're trying. There are reasons why it hasn't happened yet, but it's not, I don't think, their fault. A few reasons. One of them, and I'm going to ask for your opinion too, but I think one main reason is people here just are not selfless enough and focused enough and willing to devote their lives to this project. People with the ability to do it haven't stepped forward, or if they have, they've been soon distracted out of it. But what do you think is the reason why it still hasn't happened?
Well, it is happening. If you read the book, you will see the number of people that are actually looking at it now.
Everybody should have this, not just until the public has a way to communicate easily with the dead electronically. It's not happening. There are people who do this, and there's wonderful stuff being done, but it's not happening really yet.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, really, because we know what human beings are like. Human beings don't always do the best thing, and I just wonder what it would be like if everyone could call up the grandmother or grandfather. I don't know what that would be like. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the sort of Silver Birch. She's one of the communicators
Yes,
from
yes.
the other side. And Silver Birch talks about natural law, and everything has a natural law to it. There's nothing hard and fast. And unfortunately, the natural law is not quite the same for every person, because each and every consciousness, every person is different. And
Yes.
you can only really communicate properly with people at the same level of consciousness as yourself. I think it is the way forward. I do. I think that, as I said in the book, the electronic devices of when we get into quantum computers, then God knows what will happen. I think there'll be a huge leap forward with quantum computers. Whether I think it's desirable or not, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. Mankind is not the nicest species in the world, I'm afraid. They are not.
No, I agree. I think you're right about that. But what I think is this: when everybody knows that life continues, because that's the great barrier.
Yeah, that's the
Getting
bottom
people
line.
to know it for certain. And if that's the emphasis, if it's something that you can get for free, if it works, if it lets everybody, when they've been to a funeral, they walk right outside, or maybe even happens in the funeral, and they talk to the person who theoretically just died and find out he's happy. When that's a standard part of human life, I think humanity will be transformed, because what I found when I really understood all of this was that I knew there was no place to hide. I had to be a good person and live a good life. I wasn't always as nice as I am now. but that's what didn't you find that too? You started living on an eternal frame.
Absolutely, it's quite scary actually. Sometimes if you have an ignoble thought, you think, "Oh my God, somebody's hearing that somewhere."
Yes.
But then we are not perfect. Can I just say that once, as I say, I have no psychical ability at all. I'm quite empathetic, but not psychic at all. And I went into this not from a religious background. I did it from an academic background, and in a way, that's quite good. But once I got into it and I saw the wonderful work that particularly good mediums do, and people who have wonderful experiences, as you say, it transforms the person who's still living. It transforms their whole existence.
Yes.
I think I mentioned it in one of the earlier books that you might not have come across yet. It was years and years ago. We have a very nice medium called Gordon Smith in Scotland. Gordon's a very, very good medium. And I can't remember, 25 years ago or something, Gordon wrote his first book. And he asked me to come along to his book signing, which was a little talk, etc., before the book signing. And I said, "Sure, Gordon." So I introduced Gordon, and it was a very small, high platform, and about 200 people in Watterson's bookshop. So I introduced Gordon, don't know what I said, etc., etc. And then Gordon started to give a demonstration. And his first person, it's the only one I remember, the first woman he came to, we could only see the heads of the people who were standing below us. And Gordon said, "I'm coming to that lady about 6 rows back, the lady with the blonde hair." And a woman looked up. Now, I couldn't have told you what she looked like. And Gordon said straight away, he said, "I have your son here. He took his own life. He's wearing a baseball cap and he's taking it off and showing me his short hair and he's laughing." And he gave that woman a message about this hair, the curly hair. And the woman said, "I was always threatening to go in and cut his hair off." So he lifted his baseball cap to show the mother that his hair had been cut. Now it went on from that. He gave the boy's name and various things in the family that were absolutely 100% pertinent to that lady. And you knew that because of the way she reacted. And then he gave all the messages. I can't remember the other messages. And then afterwards, Gordon said to me, "We're going round the corner to Lauder's bar for a drink. Come round, Trish." So I went round, and when I got there, they'd set out a big table with maybe 20 people on the table, and obviously pre-COVID, and a lady was sitting beside me that I didn't know. I did know one or two, but not everybody. So I said to the lady, I said, "Oh, do you know Gordon, or do you know someone here?" She went, "No." And I said, "You're the lady that got the message her boy that took his own life. And she said, yes, I certainly am. She said, and it'll be the first time in 2 years I will have had a night's sleep. I'm a Catholic,
Oh.
she said. I went to the priest for consolation when my son killed himself, and the priest told me, oh, your son will be in hellfire and damnation for eternity.
Oh,
Which,
my Lord.
exactly.
Oh.
And she went to various, there are, people that, counsel people of lost people, but they don't really understand it. And she said, none of them, not one of them was any good. She said, but tonight I will have my first good night's sleep.
Oh, what a wonderful
I
thing.
know my son is alive. And that is the bottom line. That's the bottom line. If we can help many people to understand that, then it has changed so many people's lives. It really has. And that is my bottom line. Never mind the science. We have the bottom line and that's why I wrote the books. Because after doing this for so many years and doing university lectures in conjunction and separate with Professor Roy, Archie Roy died in 2012. And I thought, I've got all these really good lectures, I've got all this information, etc., etc. It would be a sin not to share that with the man in the street, the people who do not know that life continues. And that is truthfully my reason for writing book number 1, along with the psychical research and the credibility of the people who started to look at these things. And because a lot of it's about credibility, you have to look at who is telling me this. What do they know about it, etc., etc. And once you build up a wealth of information like that, and the one thing I'm good at is getting information and putting it in a logical way where people can understand it. There's no highfalutin grandiosity about it, whatever. It's simple, it's straightforward. And the evidence in all these different avenues is there. And I also give a bibliography and references where you can go and find out more about it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, you and I obviously have the same motivations. I mean, this is something everybody should know. Children should grow up knowing that life is eternal. And when all that happens, everybody on earth will be transformed. All the things and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like, you almost feel when you allow people to communicate easily with the afterlife, you almost think, am I giving a toddler a gun? I mean, am I doing something that is going to be harmful? But I think it's going to be helpful, because I think what it's going to do is take away so much of the fear that is burdening this world so much.
It is. Unfortunately, mankind, again, you will get the people, and you will know this more than I, you will get people who realize they can communicate with their husband or whoever they want to communicate with, but they want to go back every week and communicate through a medium, at a church. And that itself is not healthy. What the people in the afterlife want us to do is know they're okay. We will meet them again at some point when it's our turn, but get on with your own life here. Go and help somebody else.
One of the things that's happening, because I probably know more about this than you do, because I interact so much with the public about these matters, I invite emails and so on. There's a new phenomenon, Tricia. As the veil thins, and it's noticeably thinning right now, within the last year or so, I've begun to hear from people who are basically still married to their husband. I hear it's just widows I've heard from so far. And we actually just had someone on who he's a widower, and he's talking to his wife all the time. They don't need a medium. And next week we're going to talk to somebody else who discovered that she could be still close to her lover even though he had died. They weren't married, and they're starting to have sex. Believe it or not.
Oh well.
That at night. I didn't believe it either.
But fascinating.
Yes,
fascinating spectacle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. And I've told the widows in the beginning, I used to say, I'm sure that's only, a very good dream. And you say, oh no, I'm wide awake at the time.
Well, something to look forward to.
That's right. I mean, it's really amazing. I think this is the first phenomenon. This lovers staying in close contact is the very first phenomenon to come out of the thinning of the veil. But it's really it's a joy to hear these people and how happy they are. It's like they never lost anyone. It's wonderful.
Someone did want me once to write a book about sex and psychical research. So there's a project.
Yeah, there's your next book right there.
There's a project for you, Roberta.
I'm not sure. I think I'm too much of a prude, but I'm sure you could do it, Tricia.
How dare you? No.
Everyone, this is how much fun.
But once again, we come back to levels of consciousness. It really, and the intention of wanting and the emotion of being with that person, we come back to that. Sort of, they're in the same zone, so they can communicate without the physical body. There's no reason why they can't do that. Actually, there's no reason why they can't do that.
It's just funny that it's only happening now. It's just, this is the point where I had never heard of it before, and I don't think you had either. But it's very recent. But there are a couple of other things I want to make sure because this time is going so fast we won't be able to get to everything I wanted to talk about this time. But let's talk about healing miracles, because that's another thing you talk about in your book, and I think it's very, very illuminating. Can you talk about that?
Well, I myself, I did a healing study. I'm trying to remember the dates now. I think it was roughly from 2006, I think it was, to 2010. I actually did myself. I took Archie along with me, but it was really my study, and it was 5 or 6 years. I studied 2 mediums in England, and because a good psychical researcher never says that's impossible. They say, let's look at the evidence. So Archie and I, we did get some funding from the Society for Psychical Research in London, and we would go down to places in England where these 2 mediums lived, and we would independently go to sessions where they were working with people. Everyone knew that we were going to be there as researchers. And I also had the mediums provide previous patients' testimony to me, signed affidavits of things that happened. And I collected an enormous amount of data of things that had happened in the past with the mediums. And I also did research myself with the mediums. And it seemed to me that, especially the male medium, he seemed to be really fantastic with things like the skeletal system or bones or muscles. The female, she was very good at like reproduction stuff and ladies' problems, pregnancies, all of that. And there was no doubt with the patients that they had that they were certainly having an effect. And it wasn't just a psychological effect, someone seeing you, you'll feel better. And I ran a little short study in my own house during that time. And I provided people with patients, people I knew, people with no expectation. But one of the interesting ones to me was a friend of mine has a little boy, I think he was about 7, and he had Crohn's disease, inside his abdomen. And of course, the mother came along as well. And I videotaped it, of course. But the mother went in, obviously, with the child while he was getting the healing, because Gary likes you to lie down while he's doing the healing. And Gary gave the child some healing. And the interesting thing to me was afterwards, they come through and then I interview them. And the child said, unprompted, he said, it was as if 2 people had hands inside me, and it was like a little mouse running around my inside. He was pointing to his lower tummy. And now that child felt what a lot of people feel when you get a genuine healer, that there are more hands inside them than there should be. And certainly they had a very, very, very good success rate. There's another one, it was a young man, well, not yet, young, 42, and he had genetic glaucoma in which his eyes were getting worse all the time. And after the healing, he came twice for healing within my project. And of course, you don't like to tell the doctors. And he was going back to the doctors 2 weeks later. And the doctors said, oh, now he'd had this all his life. He was 42 and it was getting worse. And the doctor said, oh, your readings are much better today. Or there must be a fault with the machinery. But of course there wasn't. And these And these better levels have maintained right up to now. So
Wow.
there are definite, I mean, it's not like a magic wand, you go zoom, zoom, and they're instantly better. That doesn't work. It can do, but not normally. The healer Harry Edwards down in England, who ran a sanctuary for 40 years, he was a lovely man. He was able to put a hand on someone's goiter and just run his hand along the goiter and sort of shake it away, and the goiter would just disappear. And it's been witnessed so many times by so many eminent people that Harry Edwards could do this. So you see, all things are possible. We do not know what's possible.
Right.
And that's what you and I are all about.
Yes. But you say that the results of all of your studies have shown very clearly that the patients who were, and you said thought about, recovered significantly quicker than those in a control group.
Now, this is a different thing you're talking about.
Okay.
You're talking about absent healing studies now.
All right. Well, absent, present. Apparently, it even works if you're not even there.
Yeah. But you ought to divide it into different categories. You've got absent healing, where a religious person would say you're saying prayers for the person. Person who's not religious would say, right, we're going to send healing thoughts to whatever. Oh yeah. The information's all there in I can't remember which book it's in now, either one or two, where you've got different medical doctors who tried this. One, I can't remember his name, it might have been Randolph Bird, and he had 164 heart patients throughout England, or throughout the hospitals, and he divided them into two categories, and without telling them, he said, you're going to take part in a healing study of thoughts. And he said, well, we're not going to tell you which group you're in. If you're in the group that's going to be thought about, or the group that's not going to be thought about. And it was very much randomized. And all the patients who had similar conditions, there was not any difference in the condition. And it was absolutely clear that the patients who were thought about or sent healing thoughts got better days, if not weeks, quicker than people who were not thought about. Yep.
And you also say that it didn't seem to matter whether there was a religious context or not. It was really the good thoughts that were what did it.
Yeah, there was very little. In actual fact, the good thoughts that were sent just by an intention were marginally more successful than prayers, but it doesn't matter. That was just one study. In the book, you will see, in the other book, you'll see lots of different studies gathering all these studies together. And there is no doubt that if you send good thoughts to someone, this is where we come back again to consciousness, intention, and emotion, even within the healing. It
turns out that there really is one consciousness. It's in our minds are all part of that one consciousness, not as separate little dots. But the way, if you put smoke into the air, the smoke becomes part of the air. We are part of that one consciousness. So that makes perfect sense if, in fact, this kind of thing can happen well. I mean, positive intentions, positive thoughts could very easily affect other people, as could negative thoughts, in fact.
They can indeed.
Another little example, it turns out that important dates can affect randomly chosen numbers. The key number, what would it be, Powerball or something, in New York for 1 year after 9/11 was 911. Now, that's not a coincidence. That's because everyone was thinking about it at that same time.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, Tricia. Aren't you astonished? And
I'm absolutely astonished and fascinated.
I really never believed it because I guess it doesn't seem possible. But the way you talk about it, I guess I do believe it now.
Well, yeah, but you have to remember too that every thought that passes through your own mind may not be your thought. If you have an extremely ignominious thought about someone, you can say, well, that's not my thought. I don't want that thought. Go away. I don't deal in negativity. Never look into the abyss. When you look into the abyss is looking back at you. Keep it all positive. Don't go into negative things. Keep it towards, I would say, towards the light, the higher vibrations, the higher frequencies, and then you'll be fine, no problem at all.
That is extremely important. Will you say that again? Everyone, please listen. This is maybe the most important thing you're going to hear on Seek Reality. You have the power to control your own future to an amazing extent. Go ahead, Tricia, say it again.
Yes, I will never deal in any negative things because I just don't want them there. Never let it in. There is a saying, once you stare into the abyss is staring back at you. And that is where negativity could be let in if you allow it. And this is why it's quite dangerous for people that are maybe not terribly mentally sound. I will only deal in positive events, positive things, and keep the positivity. If you want to think of positivity as light, then you're looking at, I don't know what your things are in America, but we talk about the lights being so many wattage, 15 watt, 40 watt, 60 watt, 100, 200 watt bulb. You're aiming towards that 200 watt bulb. You keep things as light as you possibly can and don't let any of the negativity drag you down. And you can do it. And what you said there is very important. Thoughts are the most important thing, your own thoughts. And I've found this very recently myself within the COVID rubbish that's going on at the moment. I found myself sort of drifting off and saying, come on now, Tricia, get positive. If you can't find the light, be the light, do something for somebody else, something positive. And once you start on the positive track again, you'll find it much easier to cope with all of this that's going on. Don't look at negative things. That's why I have gone on ghost hunts sitting all night in the dark. That's just nonsense. That's meaningless. Yeah. I did that many years ago.
You're right. Tricia, we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything that you really especially hope that people will take away from our conversation today?
Well, there's so much, isn't there, Roberta? Yeah. I always like to tell you my own experiences, because that's the only thing that I can vouch for sure. I can look at the evidence, you can read the books, and believe me, although my books seem to be very weird, they're absolutely true. And one of the things that is really very important is one of my wow moments. Although I've been doing it for a very long time, you know that within yourself, yeah, this is true. But one of my wow moments was when a woman came to me. It was the end of the 1990s, and she said that she wanted to speak to me as her daughter had been murdered. And I didn't know the woman at all, of course. I didn't know anything about the daughter's murder. And the police were not getting anywhere. It was 6 months after her daughter's murder. And I thought, well, she wants me to get her a medium, but I'm not doing that. It's far too early if your daughter's been murdered. So I said to her, can you bring me something that belongs to your daughter, put it in an envelope, and I will try to get some mediums to psychometrize, the thing that belonged to your daughter. Now, I'm sure all of your listeners know what psychometry is, where you put your hand over something and you get information from it. I'm sure you know that. So anyway, the woman did. A couple of days later, I met her, and she gave me a brown A5 envelope with something in it. It wasn't a watch, it wasn't a ring, it was just something lumpy. That's all I knew. So I took it to a couple of, actually all the mediums were male, funnily enough. I took it to a couple of male mediums who said one or two things about it, and it wasn't very much. So I took it to another medium that I know very well, and I was able to go into this medium's house, and I just literally threw the envelope at the table. He was sitting at a table with a computer, and I said, can you tell me if you can get anything from this envelope? And the medium looked at me, sort of said, do I have to? And I went, yeah. And grudgingly, the medium, really grudgingly, the medium put his hand on this envelope, and immediately he opened his eyes and stared at me, and he said, Trish, he says, I've got a girl here that was murdered. And he went on to describe the length of her hair, the colour. She's telling me that her boyfriend was the first to know she was murdered, and he phoned my mum. She's telling me she misses her 3 cats. She's telling me that she's got 2 tattoos on her left breast and described them in colours, another one behind her right arm. She's telling me the clothes, the newspaper report of her murder was all wrong, and the clothes that she was wearing were described completely wrongly. She's telling me that when she was younger, she had a termination of a pregnancy. So, of course, I'm recording this and writing it all down. And then he said, which was really the biggie for me, he said, she's telling me that when she was younger, she was in Corntonville prison. Now, I've never known anyone that's been in prison, far less a prison called Corntonville. This lady doesn't live near where I live. And I'm thinking, well, wow, that's either right or it's wrong. There's nothing in between. And he went on to give me 29 pieces of information of that quality. She lives up in flats, one up on the right, and the road in which she lives is a cul-de-sac. And that's the other one. She said, she's telling me that today my mother has moved my photograph from the top of the mantelpiece to the top of the television. And anyway, 29 pieces of information. So, of course, I don't know if it's right. The medium doesn't know if it's right.
What did the mother say? Did the mother say it was right?
Well, wait, and I'll tell you. Hold on, Roberta, hold on. So I went home and documented it properly, all that sort of thing. I had the mother's phone number by this time, and I made arrangements for 2 days' time to go to the mother's house. I'd never been there. It's not where I live. And I walked into her flat, and the first thing I noticed was a photograph of a girl on top of the television. And I said, "Oh, is that your daughter?" I'm not going to use her name. Is that your daughter? She said, "Yes. I moved that photograph there 2 days ago." And that would be the time that I was talking with the medium. I said, "Now I'm going to read you out statements made by mediums, and I want you to tell me if they're correct or if they're wrong. There's nothing in between. They're not nearly right or they're wrong. They're either absolutely correct or they're not correct." So I started off with her boyfriend was the first one to know that she was murdered, and the boyfriend phoned you. You know, she misses her 3 cats. Yes, she had 3 cats. She lived in a cul-de-sac, one up, etc. Tattoos were right. And I said to the mother, "Can you tell me what clothing your daughter was wearing, you know, when she was found?" And she said, "Oh, the newspapers got it all wrong." And she told me the correct clothing, the blouse, the skirt, the boots, all that sort of thing. Now, in the reading, the medium gave me a description of the girl's murder. But I chickened out and I didn't give the mother that description. But the medium had said all the injuries were at her back from her neck downwards. And that did actually turn out to be correct. But I never asked the mother that. I also didn't ask the mother if she had a termination of a pregnancy, because I thought you might not have known that. And it's bad enough now your daughter's been murdered without me telling you that, you know, she had a termination of a pregnancy. So I actually only read out 22 of the 29 pieces of information. And every single piece of specific information, even to Corntonville prison, she was in Corntonville prison. And I thought that was my wow moment. There's no way, I don't know anything. The medium doesn't know anything. And you come out with the Corntonville prison plus all of the other information. That was a kind of, wow, this is real moment for me. Although I did know it was real, but that was one that was just, wow, you know, unbelievable.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot for all of us who are doing this work when you really hit a bullseye like that. But that is beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tricia, for being here. We're going to do this again, everyone. There are 2 other books. We'll space it out a little bit, but I would like you to, I've got to read those other 2 books, so for sure I want to have Tricia back to talk about them. Thank you so much, Tricia Robertson.
If they're trying to get a hold of me, I've got a website. I don't know if you've put that up or not.
The website, everyone is good. It's Tricia Robertson, robertson.weebly.com, and it will be in the materials. So if you're driving the car, you don't have to.
That's lovely. Thank you, Roberta. Well, this has been much too short, and so I mean we've only scratched the surface of what we know and what we're talking about. But you will find the 3rd book extremely bizarre, and each chapter stands on its own, quite completely different things. But photography and the Man of the Unholy Cross. Don't read that one late at night.
This is, again, the book is called Things You Can Do When You're Dead, More Things You Can Do When You're Dead. And then the one we talked about today, it's Life and Death, but Not As You Know It. And that's the 3rd book. Thank you so much, Tricia.
Thank you very much, Roberta. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes, and I'm so glad you were with us today. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began, you never will end. And when you really get what that means, it changes everything for the better. Next week, our guest will be Karen Frances McCarthy, whose second book was published by White Crow Books. Now, White Crow is also Tricia Robertson's publisher. I love these people. White Crow Books is the best publisher now working in this entire field. And Karen McCarthy's book is called Till Death Don't Us Part, a true story of awakening to love after life. Karen, who is actually a medium herself and a trained medium, and she's currently researching a PhD on contemporary ghost literature, she is someone who you can imagine would have stayed in touch, but her book is beautiful and it's gripping. Till Death Don't Us Part is another touching tale, like Ward Barkerfer, of lovers who are not separated after all when one of them died. And I think that's going to be the biggest news of the 21st century so far. The fact that the veil has already thinned so much that a close love relationship can be maintained pretty easily now by many people until the second lover to leave this world can joyously join the first. So please be sure to join us next week and help us explore this beautiful phenomenon. This week, we've been talking with Tricia J. Robertson, who is an expert in this field all the way from the United Kingdom. She has spent 30 years doing this research, and I think she and I basically complete each other's sentences, which is another way you know it's all real. If all researchers are coming up with the same results, you know it's real. This book, the one we've talked about today, again, is one more time, it's Life and Death, but Not As You Know It. And frankly, I can't wait to read the other two books, so we'll be talking with her again. As you know, of course, I have my own books. No time this time to talk about them, but you know what they are. And they're available on Amazon and on, just about, you can get them through bookstores too. And they include a children's book. All the adult books are available through bookstores or on Amazon. And the adult books are also available as audiobooks. If you ever want to talk to me about anything, don't hesitate to send me an email through the contact block on robertagrimes.com. It's green. You can see it there to one side very easily. I do answer emails, and I'm eager to hear from you. So just make sure you give me your correct email address. And meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and please make the most of this coming week in our one reality, knowing that you are a powerful, eternal being. And most of all in the universe, you are infinitely loved.
You've been listening to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Join us every week as we explore what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about the one reality we all share. Knowing the truth changes everything.